Well, hi, BookTube. I am so excited to do my last prompt for Nonfiction November, and that prompt is style. And my first thought when I think of style is always going to be Audrey Hepburn. I just love Audrey Hepburn. I think she's the embodiment of style and beauty and grace and all that's lovely. And so this book, How to Be Lovely, about Audrey Hepburn, was one that I promptly bought and kept out on my coffee table for over a year. Because I'm the only girl in the house, I think the guys got sick of it, so I had to put it away. But I do love this book. I love everything about Audrey Hepburn. I love that she was, I believe, wanted to be a dancer, but because of the build that she was born with, I think she was 5'7", it wasn't perfect for dancing, and so she became an actress. She was actually discovered, I believe, accidentally, and she became this great actress who then incorporated dance into her film. And she's a fantastic dancer and a fantastic person. Another thing about Audrey Hepburn that I think is very interesting is that she was an advocate, well, for many people, but she was an advocate early in her life during the Holocaust. So, you know how she's so petite and dainty and thin. She was malnourished during the Holocaust, and she was active in trying to help others during the Holocaust. And so I find that very fascinating about Audrey Hepburn, and especially since it's Nonfiction November, and I did a video on Elie Wiesel and the Holocaust, it seemed appropriate to mention that about Audrey Hepburn. So the second thing I think of when I think of style is teaching. And that's going to be hard to connect Audrey Hepburn to teaching, but I'm determined to do it. My pumpkin and I, it's November and I'm out in my yard, so we're gonna find a way. So I do have on my desk in my office, I guess it's near my desk, we used to have carts where we would go from room to room with our cart, and our books and our graded papers and everything would be on our cart. And you know, we decorated our carts, and my cart had a picture of Audrey Hepburn, and it said, "In a world of Kardashians, be an Audrey." And I love that. I'm sorry to the Kardashian fans out there, but I don't even know anything about the Kardashians. I just know that Audrey Hepburn is lovely, and she's just such a standout, whereas the Kardashians seem to be, you know, the trendsetters, the people in the center of all the attention. Audrey just sort of goes off on her own, and she just stands out as a picture of grace and loveliness. So teaching style, what does it have to do with Audrey Hepburn? I don't know. I really don't. I just wanted to talk about Audrey Hepburn, except to say that I hope that I demonstrate for my students grace and style and class and dignity. I think that those are important things to emulate, and as a teacher, I consider myself a role model, and I do always try to behave in a way that is graceful and kind and lovely. So I would hope that I could sort of be an Audrey Hepburn among teachers, if that's a thing. I don't know. I'm getting desperate. I'm grasping. All right, so moving on, I'll talk about teaching style. The book that I just finished recently, and I mean like this week, is No More Telling as Teaching, and it's from the Not This But That series. And I had to pick one of the books and make a PowerPoint for grad school, and I was so excited to get this. I was really excited because the art of showing, not telling, especially in literature, is something that I think is fascinating. You know, I have, as a writer in English classes and professional development, you know, tried to show in writing instead of tell. How do you show that this person is angry? Do you say the person came in the room angry, or do you say he came in and slammed the door and stomped his feet and abruptly slammed his books on his desk, right? So you're showing instead of telling. And I was really excited. I thought this book was going to be about that, but instead I was frustrated with this book. I don't recommend it at all. I was really annoyed that I was required to read a book and then present on a book that basically talks about the importance of active learning. I mean, this is not groundbreaking. I got my degree in the 1990s and I learned about the importance of active learning. So I thought, well, maybe this is something from, the 1970s or something. So I looked. No, actually, this was written fairly recently. The copyright is 2011. So I think that's pretty depressing that 2011 and this book is going to be presented as, really like groundbreaking information. You should be, engaging your students and not lecturing. I've never been one to lecture. I didn't even learn how to lecture in college. I learned about collaboration and product, like what's the end product going to be. So I didn't find this very interesting at all, but I did read it. One of my favorite quotes, though, I did like is it talked about flipped classrooms. That was relatively new. But it did say something, of course I don't find it right now, but it said something about the importance of engaging students. I think it's over here somewhere. And why we should engage students. And it basically said that if you just want to teach students, here it is. If you just want to teach students how to regurgitate information, which is what lecturing is, I say it, you write it down, you spit it back on the test. That's not really ever what I've been doing with my profession in the last 20 plus years. So I don't know why I would read a book about why I shouldn't do that. But anyway, I did like this quote. It says, if students only spit back the information on a test and never get a chance to think critically, Google might as well take over. And I thought that was true. And we need to realize that students need human beings to come alongside them and build them up and tap into their potential and bring it out. And otherwise, why not just have computers do the teaching? So I liked that quote, but I did not find this book, at all. There was nothing new under the sun in this book. Okay, this one, however, is also an old book, but this one's fantastic. Goodbye Round Robin by Timothy Rasinski and Michael Opitz. Most people think of Rozinski. Now, I went and saw Rozinski speak, like over 5 years ago, and he was really good and really engaging, so I bought his book. And now that I'm in a graduate program for reading, I found that, I need to pick a book to present. And I thought, what about that really engaging guy that spoke years ago? I have his book somewhere. Of course, I couldn't find his book. But I liked it so much, I went out and bought another one. This book I highly recommend, Goodbye Round Robin. And it just talks about, instead of like, okay, have you ever been in a classroom where the teacher says, okay, we're going to take turns. You're going to read, and then you, and then you, and then you. And I don't know about you, but my experience, especially as a dyslexic, someone with learning problems, has always been, okay, so I'm going to be the fifth person to read. I'm going to go 5 paragraphs down, and I'm going to look at my paragraph so I'm not embarrassed when it's my turn to read. Well, then I miss everything else that takes place during the reading. So that's why this book comes along and says, you know what, there are other ways to help students with reading. And there's some really cool things in here, different strategies, choral reading. I love that one. I had a student years ago with a speech impediment. And I wondered, how can I help this student to read out loud and be engaged and participate without mortifying them? You don't want to just call on somebody and say, you read, and, maybe they weren't comfortable reading because of their speech. So choral reading was what I ended up doing with that student. I said, hey, you can sit by your friend, and when I call on you to read, the two of you can read together. And that was a really positive thing for that student instead of a negative. Another thing in this book that I liked was the idea of self-selected text. I'm a big proponent of let the students pick what they want to read. And yes, sometimes there are things in the curriculum that we, must require. It's always funny to me when students, they'll say, well, I didn't like that teacher because she made me read blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we get a choice in what we make them read. We don't get a choice sometimes. Sometimes we are assigned a certain curriculum and, that's the book that the county wants them to read. Now, sometimes we get choices and there are maybe 3 or 4 and we have to pick one of those books. I like that kind of curriculum best. But ideally, I think it is really helpful for students to pick their own books. I love, right now, I have a class of students doing book talks where they can pick their own book and present to the class what they read. That's, to me, what reading really should be. It should be, what do I enjoy reading so much that I want to share it with others? And I hope that, I'm showing you why that's important through my BookTube channel. I'm making that a reality by presenting every week about books that I enjoy reading. So the idea, though, in this book is that when you have students select what they want to read, guess what? They're having to read a lot of things in order to pick the one that they're going to read. So it's actually a really cool thing because you're sneaking in some extra work there. You're saying, you can pick a book, but they're going to look through 5 or 10 books, maybe just 3, before they pick a book. But they're definitely going to have to make that selection process. And that's something that requires thought and reading, and it's just a wonderful thing. I think it's another reason that students should be able to select their own reading. Okay, this is, I don't know that I have a lot to say about this book right now. It's the role of the reading specialist and the literacy coach. And it was kind of funny because the course began with the professor saying, often the role of the literacy specialist or the reading specialist is what the principal deems the role to be. If the principal says, well, you should have a caseload, or if the principal says, well, you should be pulling out students, or if the principal says you should be dealing with assessments, then that's your role. So it was kind of funny to me to read a whole book on what my role should be when my role is going to be assigned to me, regardless of what I think my role should be. But there is some interesting information in this book. It talks about, one thing that I enjoyed in this book was we had to create a survey for other teachers and send it out to other teachers to gather information about how they teach reading and what would support them teaching their reading in their classroom across different contents. And there was a whole thing in this book on how to create a survey and what kinds of things should go onto a survey. And one thing I thought was interesting was you want to keep it no longer than 6 pages because you don't want to burden people with more work. You don't want them to see your survey as one more thing to do. You want them to see you as somebody who is looking for their honest opinions so that you can be a support, not a burden. I thought that was really interesting and an interesting way to look at things. Okay, so this one I've read in a couple of different classes. It's a chunkster, is that what they call it? I've heard some of the booktubers, they call a book like a chunkster. This one's a chunkster. However, it was used in a couple of different classes, so more bang for my buck. But it talks about multisensory teaching. And, it talks a lot about, basic teaching and phonics instruction and, like letter sounds and vowels and consonants and things like that. And so it's very helpful. But it also, the thing I got from this book, or the course where we read this book, was the importance of making learning fun and trying to create, games and activities that engage students when they're learning to read. And I thought that was a really helpful takeaway, which, of course, I started with this. This was my very first book in my graduate program. And here I am about to graduate, and I'm reading this book, which, guess what? This book already taught me that. So I'm sorry. I keep picking on this book and I shouldn't. Maybe it's not nice. Okay, so then there's from striving to thriving, and you can see I'm a post-it note girl. If you're wondering, maybe you can't write in a book in school. I can write in these but I love Post-it notes. I put Post-it notes all over everything. And this book, From Striving to Thriving, the idea is that all readers are readers. You know, there's no such thing as like a bad reader or a weak reader. Everybody is reading, you know, where they want to start or in the best place for them. They're all reading. So that would mean we're all striving. We're all able to grow. We're all able to improve, all of us. And so you can take anybody with any reading ability and bring them to thriving. So I love this image too of the little plant that's starting to take off and it can grow with the proper resources. And I feel that way about reading. I think that you should, you know, meet people where they are, help them to identify what works for them and, you know, what they like to read and what interests them, and then try and find ways to build on that. And it's just gravy if you can get the student to identify what it is that, you know, they like and what it is where they're strong areas, that they're strong as a learner, and then have them recognize that, and then ideally recognize when to use that. And really what's great is if you can get them to advocate. And you can get them to say like, well, I really like to learn this way. I have this thing called Tiqua that I did not create, but it's a writing strategy where you have the topic and then you introduce the quote and then you have the quote and you have the analysis. And I did it like this: the T and then the I and then the Q and then the A. And I was wandering around the classroom and this student changed my Tiqua, where it went, instead of from top to bottom, it went from left to right. And so she took my information and she created her own chart where she said, you know, T and then I and then Q and then A. So instead of going this way, she went that way. And I thought that was fantastic. And I told her, I said, that is exactly what I want people doing. I want you to look at information that you need, process it in the way that works for you, and then find a way to use it in a way that is actually going to be effective for you. You know, I mean, I don't need you to walk away from me knowing how to do things my way. I want you to walk away from me knowing how to think, how to grow, how to read, you know, how to engage with other people or with text. That's really what it's about. So I think that's really fantastic. I love teaching. I love especially reading. Okay, so one other thing I want to talk about, I don't have this one with me, but I did say I read a lot of articles, professional articles. And this one that I read very recently, I thought was especially interesting. And I find myself talking about this with other people, and I want to put this one out here. I will put in the description box the name of the article. I don't remember off the top of my head, but equity is a big buzzword right now, you know, and it should be. It absolutely should be. But when we think of equity, at least when I think of equity, I think of usually what's right in front of me, physical appearance. I think of, you know, like gender or race or orientation, you know, things I can see when I look at a person. But I found this article very recently, and it was about equity as a learner. And I love that. I feel very passionately about that. Are we equitable to all learners regardless of how they think and learn? Or do we just teach to a particular type of learner? And the article was really interesting because it talked about equity among readers. And it said that, you know, students who may be in one chronological grade, like they might be in, let's say, 10th grade. They're a 10th grade student, and maybe, hypothetically, maybe they're reading on a 4th grade reading level. So what do you do with that? And that's a question that I've asked myself many, many times. You know, how do you equitably teach students? Do you take the 10th grade student and say, okay, well, I'm going to give you a 4th grade text because that's where your reading level is? And this article was explaining that no, that is not what you do. And the way the article explained it, I thought was also very creative and thought-provoking, and I liked the analogy. The article said to think about reading as a fence. And all students should have the same view or have access to the same view over the fence, right? And some students are naturally tall, so they can just look and see over the fence. But what about the student that isn't tall? You know, you want to give them some kind of stepping stool or lift them so that they can see over the fence, you know? And what about the student who is perhaps in a wheelchair? You want to create some kind of ramp so they can go up and see over the fence while they're in their wheelchair. And I love that analogy. I thought that was fantastic. So the idea being that what is equitable is actually giving everybody the same information, but you may have to approach it differently. You may have to find different ways to help them access that view over the fence, if you will. In the paper that I wrote recently about that article, I was saying that, you know, during the pandemic, we had such, I mean, I don't know about any other educators, but I was just blown away. I was just completely caught off guard. I felt like the rug had been ripped right out from under me with the pandemic. And I spent hours upon hours watching other YouTubers. And it was before I was a YouTuber, but I watched a lot of other teachers who were YouTubers. And I tried to learn from them the different ways to use technology to benefit students, you know, and I learned about different things I could do with Google Slides. And I learned about just all kinds of like fun little games, and there's a flippity.net that makes different randomizer wheels and things like that. And I found myself just always online looking for technology tools that I could try and use to make learning more engaging in a virtual situation. And what I submit to you now, and what I submitted in my research paper, was why not try and be equitable with the students using technology? Why not take that student who can't see over the fence and try to find a way with the technology that is there that we've been forced to use, at least I've been forced to use. I'm an old woman. So, you know, technology does not come naturally to me. And so now that I've been, you know, learning about technology and trying to find ways to make technology my friend and to benefit my students with technology, why not use that to bridge the gap and to try and help students become, you know, better learners? Now, there's never ever going to be any one quick fix in education, I don't think. But, you know, there's all kinds of things that we can pick and choose from and utilize. And technology is one that students are usually, at least for me, they're ahead of me when it comes to technology. But why not capitalize on that? Why not say, hey, you know, maybe we don't have enough books for everybody, but there are books available online, you know? Why not let students, if they really want to read a particular book and the school doesn't have it, and they want to, you know, do a book report or something, they could get that book online. If they could get a digital copy, why not let them use that? So I definitely thought that article was interesting, and I liked the fence analogy, and I like the idea of equity. And definitely we need equity for all people, but I thought it was an interesting idea to apply that line of thinking to learners. So I really like that. And that is my video on teaching style. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day. I don't know what's in store for December. Hopefully the BookTube community has some really fun things, and I will hopefully participate. If not, I definitely have some December books in mind that I want to read, but that's another video. So thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.